The Chinese Pantheon is the latest addition to Age of Mythology Retold. Let's have a first look at the civilization as a whole, starting with their economy. China has two main types of economic units, the peasant and the Quafu. The peasant is the standard eco-unit for the Chinese. It's basically a weaker version of an Egyptian villager, which is in itself weaker than a Greek villager. In the grand scheme of things, it's a very weak economic unit. The peasants can gather food, wood, and gold, and construct buildings, but relatively slowly when comparing to all the other pantheons. Peasants do only cost 40 food, however, compared to the standard 50. But where the Chinese economy really shines is the Quafu. Quafus are giant villagers that also train at the town centre and outperform the peasants in every regard. They take double the time to train than a regular peasant and gather food at about double the rate, which makes sense. But their wood and gold gather rate is over 3.5 times higher than the peasant. They also construct buildings around 3.5 times faster as well. This makes training Quafus almost essential, and they're making sure that you distribute them on wood, gold, and building duties. They're also much more survivable against enemy raids, as they have higher HP, armor, and damage to actually fight back. Quafus do cost more than peasants though. They cost 50 food, 100 gold, and 17 favor to build. So it isn't possible to get only these guys out and ditch the peasants completely, but if you're going for some kind of boom style, you really need to get as many Quafus as possible. Now moving on to favour. In Age of Mythology, every civilization gathers favour in a unique way. The Chinese gather favour through favoured land. Each building is surrounded by favoured land shown by this yellow circle. Depending on the type of building you build, the radius for the circle can vary in size. Town centres are the origin for your favoured land, and any building linked to your town centre will expand your favoured land. The more of this land you have, the higher your favour income. You can chain multiple buildings together to expand this land further. The new building under construction does not need to directly link to the town centre to be considered favoured land. If you were to link multiple buildings to spread the land and then lose the linking building in the middle, anything past this will be cut off and no longer grant favour. To link the buildings back up though, you can just whack another building down. Any new town centres that you build do start as a source for favoured land as well, but it seems like village centres do not. These are treated like any other building. It also seems that walls do not generate favour or have any favoured land attached to them. This might sound incredibly strong, but Quafus do cost a considerable amount of favour, and to not build them would really hinder the Chinese economy. For anyone playing against the Chinese and wishing to restrict their favour supply, it's probably the best idea to destroy the linking buildings or completely shut down the favour income by taking down their TC. Now scouting. Potentially my favourite unit from the Chinese is their scout, the pioneer hero. Just like any other scout in Retold, you start with the pioneer hero right from the start of the game, and you can train additional pioneers from the temple. The pioneer doesn't have great speed or line of sight, but he does have a special ability to help him scout. His ability is to send a sky lantern up in the air. The sky lantern is a flying scout that can be sent in any direction from the pioneer. It has no attack and falls down after a short amount of time. The sky lantern is also actually controllable as a scout and can move in any direction, independently of the pioneer. And similar to Egyptian priests, the pioneer cannot pick up relics until the divine light upgrade is researched in the temple. This upgrade also gives more range to the pioneer and additional line of sight for both the pioneer and his lantern. The pioneer is also no slouch in an army, as he is a ranged hero. Let's move on to looking at the other units, starting in the classical age. The military camp could probably be considered the basic building of the Chinese, similar to a longhouse for Norse or a barracks for the Egyptians. 3 units are trainable from the military camp, and all are available in the classical age. First is the Dao Swordsman. This is a slow, tanky infantry unit with a decent attack, but no bonus damage against any class. I see this guy as a core frontline unit for the variety of archers that we're going to see in a minute, or potentially a great defender. The tooltip actually says he's decent versus everything, so I'm going to take their word for it. The only downside of the Dao Swordsman is he does only have 3.8 speed, which is going to slow down any raiding parties or even if you just want to move your army around the map. It feels like a bit of a mix between a destroyer from the Atlanteans and then some kind of standard hoplite or Murmillo style unit. Then potentially the complete opposite is the Halberdier, another infantry unit but with high speed and low damage, although it has a huge damage multiplier against cav. From the current roster, this could probably be compared to the Atlantean Catapeltes. With no cavalry being available in the classical age, this feels like this could be the best Chinese human soldier to raid in the early game. Last in the military camp is the Wuzhou Javelineer. This archer is another low base damage unit with decent movement speed for an archer. As is the case for other spear and javelin throwers, they have bonus damage against other archers. Another military building is the Machine Workshop. This building trains siege weapons in later ages. The only unit available in the classical age is the Fire Archer. Yes, another archer. Fire archers deal bonus damage versus buildings, but it is with pierce damage, so it probably won't be too much of a big deal in the early game. They also have a small bonus versus infantry. I'm not sure if these guys are strong, but with their fire arrows they feel very satisfying to use. They also train in 9 seconds, so if you have a few of these machine workshops, you can spam them out pretty quickly. Before we move on to the other units, there's something interesting about the machine workshop in the military camp. You can actually build a tower or training yard on top of one of these. So the tower is 100 wood, 100 gold, and it adds a tower to the military camp. Or you can choose a training yard. Adding a training yard increases the production speed. You can only have one addition to the building at the same time, so you can't have a tower and the training yard. Each time you want to swap, you have to pay for it again. It isn't like you get refunded. So it's important to just make the correct decision the first time. The final classical age military building is the Imperial Academy. This is your go-to place for training hero units. It's also another building you can train your pioneer scouts in, and if you're Fuji, you have access to Najar as well. Najar is a strong hero unit, unique to Fuji, and gets increased power in each age. In the heroic age, he gains the ability to swap between melee and range damage with his ring toss. Then in the Mythic age, he leaves a fire trail behind, dealing big damage to whoever walks in it. Next up, in the heroic age, we gain nothing extra for the military camp, but the Imperial Academy gains a Sage hero. This hero has a 5 build limit. He kind of feels like a monk from AoE 2. He has 2 abilities. One is he can heal allied units, and the other ability is he can stun a myth unit and create a mirror image of it for a few seconds. When I was into AoE 2 for a bit, I was always frustrated by the monks, as they either do nothing or they steal your units away, so I feel like the Sage is the perfect balance of that they stun and steal your units temporarily, but then you give them back if you can't kill them, and 5 of these guys is probably more than enough. The next hero is Zhang Xia. Similar to the Greeks, this hero can only be built once. This is a fast hero that has a passive ability of nearby enemy myth units suffering reduced damage. This hero can be built by all of the Chinese gods, and he comes with a bit of divine damage as well. The heroic age also brings more units to the machine workshop. The Choco Nu is another archer, but functions a bit differently to the others, having a very slow rate of fire, but then launching 4 projectiles one after the other within that 2.8 seconds. So he ends up having pretty decent DPS. Similarly to the Greeks, the Chinese get their ranged siege unit in the heroic age. This is the siege crossbow, pretty much does the same as any other ranged siege in the game. The heroic age is when the Chinese get access to their cavalry units. Their first cavalry unit is the White Horse Cavalry. This is when you can really start raiding. The White Horse Cavalry comes from the Baoli. The Baoli is the castle type building. On the face of it, the White Horse Cavalry is just a general cavalry unit. It's quite fast, has a decent amount of pierce armor and damage to go along with it, as well as bonus damage versus archers, which is pretty standard. The White Horse Cavalry also has an interesting ability. This is to fire a bow attack, so basically you get access to yet another archer. This potentially ups their raiding game even further. These guys also only train in 9 seconds, so you don't really need too many castles up to get these guys out. Finally, in the Mythic Age, the Baoli also gives you the Tiger Cavalry. This is an extremely strong cavalry unit, a bit slower than the White Tiger Cavalry, also having a small bonus versus archers and other cavalry. The special thing about this guy is when he gets taken out, you actually have a small infantry unit that comes afterwards. It doesn't have much health. The best comparison would probably be to the Poseidon Militia, basically just getting an extra unit for free, more there just to tank a bit more damage. Last up for the machine workshop, we have the melee range siege unit, the Axe Cart. This acts like any other melee range siege unit in the game, and it has quite a funky attack style. The Mythic Age is also when you get your unique hero for whichever major god you're playing. For Nuwa, she gets Li Jing, a very powerful ranged unit with an interesting attack pattern, and he has a crazy ability. His ability summons a golden pagoda that immobilizes enemy units for a significant amount of time in a large area. Fuji gets Yang Jian, who has an ability to summon a celestial dog, which basically chain attacks everything in front of you. And then when he gets around to attacking, he's got a 9 times multiplier against enemy myth units and a 6 AoE damage. Last but definitely not least, we have Wen Zhong for Shenong, and this guy is ridiculous. So he has AoE damage, doing huge damage. He even has 80 crush, which is pretty ridiculous, but he also has the same ability as the Sage, which stuns a myth unit and steals it for a certain amount of time. And I've typed it. It is 20 seconds that this ability lasts for. I don't know if I did some special circumstances or not, but that seems a bit overkill. So yes, these heroes are extremely strong, and I do expect some nerfs to come pretty soon, to be honest. But that is it for the overview of the Chinese military and economy. In the next China overview video, we're going to do a deep dive into the major gods, minor gods, myth units, and god powers, and also their technologies. So see you in the next one.